Hi, welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to another CMO Circle webinar. This is another adventure, crossing the Rubicon into the world of AI in marketing. This is episode number 5, I believe. We've been doing this and we do these on the last Friday of every month. This will be recorded. I'm going to turn that ping off in a sec. This will be recorded and will be on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the CMO Circle. So check them out on there, post the facts. We will email everyone that attends the link to it. So please subscribe to that channel if you want to go back and look at some more of those. Two incredible speakers today we have. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They're going to do a little bit of a talk. Again, put any questions that you want to in chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the call and allowing these folks to answer those questions. So I'm going to let these guys, Rob, if you introduce yourself first, and then Mustafa, you can introduce yourself and keep talking after. That's probably going to be the simplest bit. So Rob, please introduce yourself, and then Mustafa, and then you can take it from there.
Cool. Thanks, James. Yeah, it's good to be back here. Yeah, my name is Estreitinho. I run a one-person consultancy called Salmon Labs, and I like experimenting with AI and strategy and writing about it. So I'm going to tell you some of the things I've been trying out.
Yeah. And yeah, my name is Mustafa. I am co-founder of Shroomi. I've been in marketing, specifically influencer and creator marketing, for 6 to 7 years. And I've been diving deep on AI for the past 2 to 3, specifically within marketing, but also outside, building AI agents and workflows. And yeah, I'm trying to actually provide some actionable feedback and advice, rather than just telling you AI is the future. So I will jump into it right now.
Please take it away.
Perfect. All right. Cool. So, yeah, beyond the buzzwords, I don't want to just hype AI. I think it is hyped already. I think we're in a space right now where there's always a new tool popping up. There's new updates always happening, and it's hard to keep up. But I kind of want to ask the real question: is it just hype, or is it going to be transformational for us, specifically within marketing? How can we really leverage it to really supercharge our teams and help us, move faster? I use AI in multiple different ways every day, and as I'm doing it, I'm diving deeper on how to leverage it to its best capacity. Bit of context around me. As I said, I am founder of Shroomi, but I'm also previous CTO and co-founder at Yoke Network, and we were focused on growing mobile apps through social media creators. Did this for 6 years, and our focus was short form video, making short form video, but not only just video for reach, but trying to make people take action. So we drove 2 billion plus views, 10 million plus users for hundreds of brands that we worked with. And we were also able to grow our own pages, like the Wave House, which was the fastest growing creator house in the UK and Europe. But then, yeah, we have the one question: how can we actually use AI to help us win? This is an example of one of my friends. So one of my friends was making an Instagram post about sports, and he, I watched him prompt, and I was actually so, shocked. Someone, relatively young, but was just saying, "Oh, can you please give me ideas around, Instagram carousels and stuff like that?" As you can expect, the results were terrible. I think we've all experienced when we go to ChatGPT and we just say the results are just generic and vague, and just they don't hit the spot, right? But the key thing when it comes to that is context. Context is the most important thing when it comes to not only just these tools like ChatGPT and Gemini, etc., but AI as a whole. We've seen, Instagram algorithm. We've seen all of these machine learning engines for the past couple of years all rely on historical data, information about you before they can actually get better. And if there's one thing I want you to kind of take away from today, it's just invest in context. I think you need to, when using these tools, you need to think less about what do I specifically want, and more so about how do I get to, use this tool to help me get to what I want. So it's about, kind of bringing the information together so that you can get to where you want. And this is where I come into prompting. As I showed you that example of my friend, he, was just kind of trying to get the perfect kind of Instagram carousel, kept chatting and still wasn't able to do it. And I just quickly took his laptop and I showed him the steps I always take when it comes to prompting, even if it's for a small thing, even if it's preparing for this presentation right here. What I do is I specify initially persona. What do I want the AI to be? Who's the expert that I'm relying on? Specifically for this, it might be a marketing expert with 20 years experience and, is perfect at public speaking, right? And needs to be able to, guide me through, making my presentation like super kind of concise, but valuable. What this does is it just narrows down the focus and allows, the AI to just focus on specific knowledge around that topic. Next is the goal. What are you actually trying to achieve? In a way, it's kind of therapeutic because I get to just like think about what I'm trying to actually do in a bit more detail. And then you specify exactly what you're trying to do. And then the most important part, which is getting highlighted, is information. Every time I'm thinking about a task or some sort of like way I can do things quicker, I think about where am I going to get the information? How can I get the information? And this is the most important part. You need to be able to give it anything you can. Good examples, bad examples, background context. Here's how I was feeling yesterday. Like everything that can kind of, possibly give it the right information so that it can deliver to the best of its ability. Think about it like, imagine you had an intern that's starting tomorrow or, completely new team member. When you're onboarding them, you're looking at providing all the company information specific to, what they need to know for their role, how, what the kind of ways of working are, etc. And when you're doing that, you're giving them that context. And especially with someone kind of coming from the complete outside, they need that context enabled to do in order to do their job. So this is the most important part here, providing that information. I spend probably maybe too long, collating examples and information. Then output is the next bit. And this is specifically, what do I actually expect? How do I expect it? And what's really like, what am I going to take and move forward from? And then after that, it's just iteration. So our jobs go from, years ago being like kind of doing everything and struggling to, do everything in one go to now simply orchestration. We take information, we move information along, and we are purely just guiding that information so that we can help ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude guide us by guiding it. And let me show you actual practical example. So this is St. Jid's. This is my previous co-founder at my previous business. He came to me one day and said, we have been growing all these brands and doing everything on social media, but we don't have a personal brand for ourselves. We should be taking all of our insights and doing it for ourselves. And then, we started posting, saw somewhat success, but we really started to actually see success quite rapidly once we started to use AI. But the way we used AI was less so in terms of video creation or like, tools like, for AI creators or whatnot. What I'm most excited about is the creative process, using AI within your process to be able to supercharge you. So what we did was we were looking at his videos that performed the best. We were transcribing them. We were looking at the scripts, the hooks that worked the best. We were looking at the comments. What are people resonating with? We're looking at creators within his niche that he's competing with. What has performed the best for them and how can we use that? That's the context we're providing. So then when he comes and says, I have an idea, we're able to then, use that context to deliver the script in the best way possible. And then beyond that, we're then able to kind of add other documents like examples of, scripts that work well or methodologies for building scripts, for example. And he was able to grow significantly. And he was able to grow from essentially nothing about 15 months ago to 115K followers on TikTok and 115K followers on Instagram. And he's been able to build a business from that. I'm going to ignore that. So then, yeah, we essentially started to question, we were still kind of manual. We built, some custom GPTs and workflows and things like that. And then Shroomi kind of came about because I realized like we can actually start to productize this because these were the same issues we had within our internal team where we were spending probably 15 to 20 company hours per week or per campaign looking at ideating, coming up with ideas, looking at competitors' ads, and kind of analyzing what's working so that we can brief our creators, pitch brands. So here's where kind of Shroomi comes about. I'll just give a quick little demo. Let me just move this. So here's Shroomi. The goal of Shroomi is essentially to allow you to make the best videos possible. I've got experience from those 2 billion views and 7 years in this space, and I've tried to put all my information as well as the bank of content that we actually have to allow you to make videos that perform the best when it comes to short form videos. This is a perfect example of how context is being used. Here, remix. This was one of the most common problems I had. I was transcribing videos, looking at competitors. All you do is you provide a TikTok link for the video of, maybe another brand that you've seen work really well, or you upload a Facebook ad if you want. You specify the product that you're trying to promote, as well as the key features that you want to talk about, target audience, as well as additional context. Then you click Create Remix. It will go off and it will find the video, download it, transcribe it, analyze it, and then give you 5 new ideas and concepts based on this. You just simply click build out, and it gives you the full script, shot list, as well as 5 different hooks for you to test. So this is something that we were able to build not only for Jide, my friend, but also other creators, other brands that are trying to do this consistently. We were pushing out hundreds of videos per month, and with this approach. Second thing is second opinion. Once you actually make that video, we have second opinion here. One of the most common questions I get when I'm speaking with brands and friends and other clients is, I've just made this video, what do you think? And I wanted to kind of just remove myself out of that and try and automate that process. So before you actually post the video, you just upload it, and then it uses the context from best practices, my knowledge, what's worked well in the past, hundreds of other videos that have done really well and formats, and it gives you a report. As you can see here, that's my face. About a month ago, I never posted ever on TikTok. I was private, and I decided I'll start actually posting as a case study myself. And in about a month and a half, I've gained 4,000 followers on TikTok, as well as 400,000 to 500,000 views off of 6 or 7 posts. But what I'm doing is essentially I'm making a video that I think would work. I'm passing it through here. And what second opinion does, it analyzes and scores the first few seconds of your video, tells you kind of what works, rescripts it for you, and gives you alternatives too. And then what's important for all of these platforms is retention. Even if you're doing ads, if your call to action is 15 seconds in, but your average watch time is 6 seconds, that's terrible. So you need to be thinking about how you're, kind of pushing the users through. And when you're doing that, Shroomi watches the video and it picks up danger points, points that, your audience is going to drop off. And as you kind of go through this, it will tell you maybe speed this part up, remove this completely, you've gone off track, audience is going to drop off here. Simply go tell your editors and your team, cut that out, and typically it performs better. I actually had a video where I decided to go against the advice, and I said, you know what, I'm the best creator ever, I know everything. I posted a video, it told me to remove a specific thing that I thought was really cool, and I checked my data. The average watch time was dead on 18 seconds when that point where kind of the story diverted a little bit was there. It analyzes your engagement, and also if you're promoting something, it would look at the convert, like kind of your call to action, the amount of value you're providing versus your pitch. And also importantly, to scale your creative ideas, it takes the concept that you've done and sees how much you can iterate on it. Other videos you can make based on that as well. And going back to this, with Jide, we were able to literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, he posted a video, and after about 11 hours, he got 968 views. He thought his social media career was over. So he put it through second opinion. He made a few tweaks to the hook. As you can see, like the actual thumbnail slightly differently. He made a few tweaks to the hook, some retention tweaks, and now the video is actually at 178K. And he's been able to gain 1,200 followers from that. Small tweaks that are able to, kind of improve significantly, because at the end of the day, we're marketing to real humans and not just algorithms, And this winning context, again, background information, context, providing your competitors' ads or your competitors' videos gets you to more wins, allows you to build better videos faster. And again, I am doing one-to-one strategy calls for free. So yeah, I'm also providing 10 free video analysis for anyone that's interested. So if you are interested, simply hit me up at Mustafa@Shroomi.AI with the subject CMO strategy call, and I'll be happy to speak. So thank you very much for the time. Are there any questions?
You've definitely found the right audience, Mustafa, because this lot love free stuff. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And it's I'm going to ask a quick question if I may, unless anyone else wants to. So the example that you showed was wild because that person went from it's like 100,000 views from 1,000 views to 100,000 views. So he 100x'd his performance. Were there any other parameter changes as well? Like I understand the optimizations you made within the retention and view time in the first 3 seconds. Was there any other changes, or is that just it? That's
That
one
was
episode.
yeah, for his video, that was it. So he's got the same level of experience that I do, right? We've been in this game the same amount of time, kind of co-founding our previous company. But again, when you're creating things, you think, oh, okay, this is my concept, this is how I'm going to do it, but you still question it. And what I like and what we were able to do is Shroomi just looks at it and says, I've got this information. I know kind of the type of things that work. Here's what I would recommend. And he just followed it and was able to just do that. He made specifically, I think, 2 to 3 tweaks. The hook, the first few seconds, Shroomi said it was too formal, kind of would cause people to drop off a little bit. And then throughout the video, there were specific scenes that he just cut or replaced, basically. And we got to remember, at the end of the day, we're marketing and we're pushing to real people. So I think a lot of the time, people try and hack the algorithm, and there are things that you can do to do that for sure. But at the end of the day, TikTok, Instagram, they all care about, good quality content that just keeps people on the platform, and that draws people in. If your videos aren't doing that, it's just not going to work.
Fascinating and massively enabling to anybody, right? Being able to dive into that video quality within those seconds. You don't need a massive audience to do that. So
Sure.
thank you for that. Raised hand, Paul, ask your question, please.
Thanks, James. Mustafa, really insightful. I just wanted to check, does the same trick work for LinkedIn video?
It's interesting, yeah. So I posted a LinkedIn video, I'm going to say a month ago, maybe a month and a half, and it did work. So basically, I took a video from a creator on Instagram. She just launched her app, basically. And I thought, I need to make a video about Shroomi. So I just took that, provided the context around Shroomi. It gave me a script, tweaked it slightly because I have more context again. And then I made the video following the instructions, passed it into second opinion, made the editing tweaks after that, and then it did well. Like I was able to actually generate customers off that. So it did quite well.
So just to play that back, if I were creating something in my normal way, I would then introduce a step where I would ask Shroomi to improve it before I posted it.
Yeah, that's the idea basically. So
Right, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
All within the first 3 seconds. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for that, Mustafa, and thanks for all the questions. We will be sharing contact details in the follow-up email. So if you want to find Mustafa's stuff, you haven't written it down, you can do that. So that's amazing. So fascinating stuff in the video world. So on to our next speaker. Rob, going to pass over to you. And yeah, the mic is yours.
Wicked. Thanks, man. Okay, let me share this. So it's good that Mustafa and I are quite complementary in our subjects because he's helping you very much on the practical side and the stuff that goes out. I try to do that as well, but because my background is philosophy, I kind of went, oh no, it'd be really cool to talk about critical thinking. So let's talk about critical thinking. And can everyone see that screen all right?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. So the starting point for me here is this question: can AI accelerate critical thinking? Because, it is a pertinent question, and there's two answers. The first answer is, fuck no, it can't. We're doomed. We're screwed. It's all over. Why are you even trying to get a job? Why are you trying to keep a job, etc.? But of course, that's only what the industry narratives are about. Like you do a quick search and you pretty much start getting a bit of a bubble about how we're all doomed, the death of deep thinking. And by the way, some of the authors of some of these pieces are people I know and respect. And I understand that it's a risk. They're not saying it's all over, but the risk is there. But if we're not careful, we look at all these pieces and we go City AM, Big Think, SciPost, universities, science blogs. It's like, oh my God, it's over. And if you have kids, you think, oh my God, it's over for them. And it gets very doomy very quickly. And every time I feel a little bit anxious about technology, I go back to Kevin Kelly, who is a phenomenal writer. He kind of co-founded Wired magazine. One of the best, most instrumental books I've ever read is What Technology Wants. And in it, he has this great sentence where he talks about how most of the unintended consequences that so scare us in technology usually arrive in ubiquity, but most of the good things do so as well. And so I find this kind of my get out of jail card whenever people go, oh my God, is AI going to save us or is AI going to destroy us? And I go, most technology has the potential to do both, right? If I have a hammer, I can build a house or I can whack you in the head, etc., etc., etc. And the other reason I like this idea from Kevin Kelly is because it makes me feel like that even when things are big and like changing at such a rapid pace, I always have agency, right? And we all have agency in the middle of these things. And put bluntly, this whole doomerism of it's the death of critical thinking, the future is going to be just bots selling to bots and buying from bots and reporting back on what the bots said, and fuck knows what the humans are doing in the middle of all this, maybe doing art, but probably just freaking out. It's just not the future I want to build. So for that was a starting point. I was like, well, what is the future I want to build? And I do like writing and I do like philosophy, but the problem with philosophy is that it's not always practical. So the other thing I like to do is experiment and just go, let me just, press some buttons here and there and try different things and kind of use the tools wrong and see if we can kind of get to interesting use cases. And so yeah, that's kind of the genesis of what led me to start Salmon Labs, which is the company I run. It's a consultancy, but it's also kind of, as the name indicates, it's a little lab. It's a place where I write strategy, but I experiment around how to do strategy as well. And what I wanted to talk to you is yeah, some of those experiments. On the consulting side, I kind of talk about how. By the way, I can talk for ages about fish analogies around this shit, right? I've thought very hard about the name of the company, but yeah, I talk a lot about how I help brands and people find the spine in their strategic thinking. But it's actually quite central to this because what's interesting about AI is that it gives you so much good stuff, so much potential. But even with tools like with what Mustafa's building, you go, okay, brilliant. This is what the tool recommends, but ultimately you're in charge of signing it off, right? And you might actually conclude that something might be great for the algorithm, but it does not represent your tone or your personality, and you might actually decide against it. That is always a choice. Or you can ask the tool to give you different types of feedback that feel more like you. And so this idea of finding the spine that makes something kind of interesting but also true to you is something I find extremely powerful. And it's something that, of course, marketing teams should always go back to, right? Because otherwise we're just kind of becoming commoditized versions of what we think our brands and ourselves should be about instead of something that feels quite true and distinct. And so enough spiel on that. I've worked with so many brands, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is this. I want to talk about my thesis, which is when used wisely, of course, massive caveat, AI doesn't need to replace your critical thinking. It can actually help accelerate it. Now, of course, the question is how. And so I bring you 7 ways in. And these are 7 ways in brought of either thought experiments or actual experiments I've done by myself or with builders, one of which is actually on this call. So if you see a name in the call, which is Piotr Bombol. He is the co-founder of a tool I'm a big fan of called Ad Daily, and I'll talk you through some of the experiments we've done as well. But there's a few other bits too. So I want to start with one of the best pieces of advice. So for context, my background is like advertising strategy. And one of the best pieces of advice around advertising strategy is rigor at the edges, chaos in the middle. The creative process is chaotic. There is no other way around it. And not everyone has the stomach for that. And sometimes not even the people who think they have the stomach for that feel like they have the stomach for that. But that chaos is best used when you're very rigorous at the start and at the end. So I'm actually going to turn to a CMO who I hugely respect, Paul Dervan, or Dervan. I don't know how to pronounce his last name because I've heard it in different ways. And he is doing something that I think is really cool. One, he's writing a book in public, which is a great idea. Just like, you know, Substack by Substack, like here's a new chapter, and then at the end he's going to turn it into a book. And also he is building these different ways of using AI to apply rigor to the marketing, in this case, the marketing strategy process. And so, for example, let me see if I can play this again so you can kind of see it. He documented the different ways in which communications work, and he's specifically talking about communications, not the 4Ps marketing. And he basically go, right, I built a little knowledge-based thing that you can load into Claude or ChatGPT. And then based on that, you can load it your brief, and you can go, right, does the logic in this brief make sense? Am I being clear about whether, for example, this campaign is about salience or about persuasion? Is it about fame or direct response? Is it about brand building or short-term response? It's like all these things about how is this communication actually meant to work is a big question. And, you know, he's basically building these practical tools that allow us to be very rigorous at the beginning of the process so that then we know how to evaluate the ideas that our agencies send back or our in-house teams send back, etc. And I think stuff like this is great because, you know, you could go to ChatGPT and go, hey, come up with a campaign that X, Y, and Z that does this for my brand, and it will give you stuff, right? And we'll get into the stuff part in a second. But what this is brilliant at is it helps you question and stress test the premise of your brief. And, you know, we've all been on either side of a brief that may not always have been as single-minded as we wanted it to be. I've been on the receiving end of those, and frankly, I have written those because sometimes you don't have time to kind of make it shorter and clearer. So tools like this are brilliant as like a stress test of like, are you being absolutely clear about the premise in your brief? So by the way, all the stuff I have here, I have links that I will share with James, and it can just go like with the link to the presentation because it's all publicly available. So then the second one is the idea of taste. Obviously, everyone is now obsessed with taste. The engineers in Silicon Valley discovered that taste is a thing and optimization isn't everything. Surprise, surprise. But I like the idea that you can develop your taste levels through repeat exposure. So, you know, it's a little bit like if all you read are you know, top 10% fiction novels of all time, your taste in fiction goes up, right? Versus if you just read like really trashy fiction. I'm not dissing on trashy fiction, but you know, it's like your taste adapts to the thing you are constantly exposed to. And so with this one, it's more of a thought experiment. But the idea that, so again, I come from marketing and marketing communications and advertising strategy background, and everyone kind of worth their salt in my field eventually does the IPA test of effectiveness. There are great effectiveness papers out there. They publish them every couple of years. They're all about long term, yada yada yada. And my contention is, if you're a strategist in an agency or effectively someone in charge of comms, and you challenge yourself to, for a month, only read IPA effectiveness papers, my guarantee to you with like a 99% certainty is that you will think 90% of the case studies that you see being talked about are absolute dog shit. They're incomplete. It's, you start seeing that when someone goes, well, someone did a TikTok and suddenly sales went up 70%, and you go, yeah, but what were the other factors? Like, did your distribution go up? Did you put discount? Like, are you looking at sales or profit margin? Is it short term or long? And suddenly you start getting a sense that like most of the kind of effective cases could do with a little bit more scrutiny. Now, I'm not saying this so that you can diss on the effectiveness cases. We have enough of that on LinkedIn. What I am saying is that being exposed to high quality material actually increases your taste levels. And so one of the things that I am quite curious about is how AI can help us basically offer that curated knowledge base so that we are more selective about where we draw inspiration from, and specifically how we apply the rigor to our thinking. And if you don't have access to the IPA, I have access to all these papers. If you want any, by all means, I am such a nerd for this thing. I will find them for you because they are, in my opinion, mandatory reading for anyone who's ever touched a communications brief. Right. I don't have shares in the IPA, by the way. I just really like their work. That leads me to an experiment, an actual field experiment that I did with Adeli and Piotr, which led us to this idea that our job is to the dynamic between AI and humans is that AI helps us see lots of things, and then our job is to notice the good ones, right? So Piotr and I gave ourselves a very simple task. Could we use AI to solve big, hard, culturally packed problems using a tool like AdDaily? So for context, AdDaily is basically an AI strategy tool. It kind of is designed to be an end-to-end strategic development tool. But unlike a ChatGPT or a Claude or whatever, it is impossible for it to hallucinate because it doesn't use like the generative part of just, statistically combining a bunch of things. It only draws from quality material, trend reports, actual things that got published and vetted, effectiveness papers, tried and tested frameworks, et cetera, et cetera. And so we thought, okay, great. There's all this like knowledge in this kind of weird robot brain in AdDaily. Can we throw it some questions and kind of go, for example, I'm going to pause here maybe on one that I particularly fancied. We talked about, okay, how can we create healthier value systems and support networks for young men? And because we wanted to be precise about what we gave the tool, we went, hey, imagine you're solving this brief for Tinder and the market is Brazil. So amongst other things, it pulled all sorts of background research around culture, category, consumers, the brand itself, because it does use kind of some web search capabilities, but to find out about like, what is this brand? What is this Tinder thing? Oh, I got it. And so the way in which it kind of just gave us background information was useful. But then, and I'm not going to labor the point too much because I'll send a link after, the response to the brief was interesting because then it starts going, okay, well, based on all this research, I think you should look culturally through these lenses. You should look from the competition side through these lenses, etc. Based on that, this is your strategic statement and the problem to solve. Based on that, here's your get who to buy brief, and so on and so forth. And it goes all the way to give you like activation thought starters. But what was interesting is that throughout this process, Piotr and I kind of documented ourselves. Documented ourselves kind of evaluating the results and kind of going, where's the interesting in here? And the stuff was there, but we had to know when to notice it, right? So for me, it suggests that perhaps there is still a hope for many of us where a tool like AdDaily still can't do the full end-to-end job, but it really bloody helps with kind of the grunt work of research and things like that. But it is still our job to know how to notice where are the good things. And the example I really liked, which I think is here towards the end, oh yeah, it's this one, where we asked about trust in institutions. And we basically said, if you were the New York Times and you're doing a campaign in the USA, very timely, how would you revive trust in institutions? And it came up with all these different angles into, think of this way, that way, etc. A lot of stuff we already knew. But then at some point it went, well, one way of thinking about this is that you could explore trusted information as a form of intellectual well-being. And we were like, holy shit, like there's something there, because suddenly now you can talk about news media, but using the codes of another category, which is well-being, mindfulness apps, and etc. Because it's basically going, the people who trust in people who rely on trusted information from those institutions are people who take really good care of their brains. I love that. It just takes you a different place altogether in your communications. But the tool didn't tell us that was it. We had to spot it. And so, but again, the idea that it drew from all this kind of curated knowledge base gave us all sorts of options. And then we went, oh, that one, that might be an interesting way in, I think kind of is a good testament for currently how AI can help us maintain critical thinking skills, or perhaps why they're more important than they ever have been. Another little trick I like to do is, we've all seen the news that ChatGPT is actually kind of a bit of a yes man / yes woman, and makes you feel like really good. And it goes, well done, Rob. You're really good at like asking about domain registration. And I'm like, dude, I don't want a brown nose. I just want to fix the problem. So the tool's designed to make you feel really good and always give you confirmation. What I like to do is ask it for contradictions. And contradictions are fascinating because specifically if you work in comms, that's where like the really interesting bits come from, right? So I'll give you an example. I like building custom GPTs as well, and I like giving them really dodgy names, right? So if you look here on the left, it's things like Themity Elephant, which is about content themes, Positioning Poser, which is about positioning, Field to Burn Back, which is creative development tool. It's dorky shit, right? But this one, which is probably the worst, Marshall Cultural Matters, and shout out for those who get that reference, all it does is it takes the framework that Marshall McLuhan came up with called the tetrad of media effects. I'm trying to pause it there so you know what it is. And it basically, what that is 4 lenses through which you can look at cultural movements. And then it basically kind of goes, okay, give me a topic and I will give you a diagnosis of how to evaluate that topic through the tetrad of media effects that Marshall McLuhan came up with. And so, for example, I went, all right, analyze the manosphere for me. And so the tetrad basically works with 4 elements. It's like, what does this thing enhance? What does this thing reverse? What does this thing bring back? And what does this thing make obsolete? And so I went, okay, give me a TLDR on the manosphere. And I went, well, the manosphere, it amplifies things like male solidarity, blah, blah, blah. It reverses things like empowerment. Sorry, I'm just going to go there. The little fat fingers. It makes obsolete the idea of like nuanced conversations and mainstream narratives, etc., etc. But what's interesting is that you can basically use it for whatever you want. What does it bring back? Traditional gender roles, male bonding rituals, yada, 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 heroic myths. And so it is brilliant as a way for you to look at something and kind of go, okay, if everyone is now obsessed about, I don't know, like this is kind of a 2-year-old reference, but the idea of quiet quitting, you go, hey, weirdly named bot, can you tell me how should I evaluate the phenomenon of quiet quitting? And it's going to tell you, well, it brings back this, it kind of challenges that, it makes this obsolete, etc. I find it brilliant to just give you like all the possible dimensions through which you can evaluate any given topic. And you can do this for culture, you can do this for a category, you can do this for a particular idea that you see in the news. I think, stuff like this, again, just kind of rubs off on you because it gives you the templates, the mental models through which you can evaluate like all the hype that goes on in marketing. And goodness me, there is hype going around. This one is probably a kind of a build on the other thing that I learned with Piotr in our experiment, is this idea that the job of AI is to generate new choices. Clues in the name, right? It is very good at generating things. You know what? It's not good at making choices for you because, sure, you can ask it, but the way I like to think of it is that every choice an AI gives you offers you a very simple decision tree. You either accept that choice and craft it because there's always kind of room to improve on it and kind of, take it, kind of make it 20% more interesting, 30% more interesting, perhaps adapt it to the language that your business likes to use to make the same point. or you challenge it altogether. You know, when we did the experiment, a lot of the stuff we did around, you know, how do you talk about ultra processed foods? And if you were M&S, how would you do it? It started going off on a weird tangent. We were like, no, 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 don't talk about that. Talk more about this. But again, like, we couldn't just accept blindly what the tool was telling us. We had to go, okay, we're either going to craft what it gave us, like the idea of intellectual well-being, or we're going to challenge it and go, no, 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 don't worry about that. Focus on this instead. If you think about it, it's kind of how we work with juniors and people learning the craft, and in fact, sometimes working with each other, right? If I'm sitting with a client and we're just kind of workshopping an idea for positioning, right? I can generate so many choices, but then their job is to either go, oh, that one, we shouldn't do that because the business hates that bit of language and, you know, historically didn't work. Or they go, oh, that's interesting. How about if it's this, that, on the other? And so that exchange between how we collaborate is the dynamic that we should adopt when using AI tools. And so with this one, for example, I did an experiment, very simple experiment, which it doesn't matter if it's good. What matters is that it gives you options. And I went, how would you position the CMO circle, a WhatsApp community, in an era of feed fatigue? Or, as I've seen recently described, social media recession, which I love. But basically, I went, okay, based on my knowledge base of, you know, I fed it a bunch of shit like, you know, the beloved brand's kind of functional and emotional benefits framework. I fed it April Dunford's product positioning frameworks, all sorts of stuff. And I'm always adding new things and you know, just basically like anonymized but very simplified versions of like how to think about these things. And it just went, okay, well, based on that, here are some options for how to think about it, how to think about the challenge, how to think about the target audience, how to think about the promise, how to think about the reasons to believe. And look, I can show this to James and he might go, yeah, like we've tried doing the connected and supported thing, it doesn't work. Oh, but you know, the sense of belonging really works because fractionals feel fucking lonely. I go, brilliant. Now we're making choices and now we can go, belonging is the space you're playing. Let's build upon it. Let's make it feel like you, right? You are crafting it. You're not just accepting it. And most of it, you're just going, nah, not that. But that dynamic is fundamental to practicing critical thinking. I'm nearly done. The other thing is, you know, garbage in, garbage out. The quality of what goes in correlates with the quality of where you go next. And that's really where kind of a tool like AdAly, which I'm a big fan of, comes in, which is like, again, it's just brilliant. By the way, kudos to Piotr and the team for coming up with this this value prop of it takes you from A to Y and the final 10% is up to you, because that is what it does. It removes the grunt work, and then your job is to either challenge what it gave you or craft it and make it really, really good. So just a shout out to Piotr and the work he's doing, because that single experiment pretty much spawned this entire talk. And I was like, fuck me, like my synapses are all firing on all cylinders. So yeah, I just wanted to give a little shout out on that. But basically, garbage in, garbage out. Know where your sources are coming from. Because sure, ChatGPT could do a lot of this stuff, but good luck verifying everything it tells you. Last but not least, if you're thin-skinned like I am, I think I'm better at like when people say, no, that's wrong or that's not right, whatever. But it's actually much easier for a machine to tell you you're wrong, right? And so that experiment in itself is almost like a good way of microdosing failure and rejection, right? So one of the things I wrote recently is this idea that like, you know, sometimes I saw someone saying in the chat that like, you know, they kind of use ChatGPT to kind of review plans and stuff. And a lot of times people go, does this make sense? And because ChatGPT is a little sick pants, it just goes, yeah, it makes total sense. I prefer to start with the slightly more uncomfortable question of, okay, yeah, does this make sense? But also prove me wrong, right? Give me, like, devastate this plan, right? You're the hyper aggressive CEO that will challenge everything. What am I missing? And the process of going through that is the point, right? You're identifying barriers of where your argument might fall short. Now, of course, it really sucks because sometimes we're pressed for time and it was like, oh my God, I just want to get this done. But it really makes a difference. So yeah, and at least personally, if I ask someone I know to trash a piece of work I've done, sure, I'll accept it and I'll get over it, but it stings a little bit. For some reason, a machine doesn't sting whatsoever because it's a machine. So use that to your advantage. So, in summary, These are things I've been thinking about and experimenting with, but I always like kind of leave people with like practical things they can do tomorrow, next week, and next month. So really, I'm going to share links to all this stuff. And frankly, I just like giving all this away for free, right? Because I want you to use these tools and I want you to understand how they, what works for you and what doesn't. So that's something that once we send the link, I mean, don't do it tomorrow because it's Saturday, do it on Monday. Next week, start reflecting like what works, what doesn't. These are my personal reflections on using these tools and kind of the little things that they can do. But you might go, actually, none of those use cases apply to me, but I found out 10 other use cases that you hadn't thought about. That's brilliant. We're all trying to work it out. And last but not least, I would encourage you to even try and create your own custom LLMs for very specific tasks. There's tons of stuff you can automate, or at least get the 90% done so that you can focus on the 10% that matters. End of that. If you're curious about more of these experiments, I write a lot here on this link, which I'll also share. And thank you very much for your time and for indulging me.
Consider yourself indulged, Rob. Thank you for that. Fascinating. If anyone has any questions for Rob or also for Mustafa, please drop them in here. Just maybe one, just quick one for me, Rob. Is there kind of you've done all these experiments, right? And we're benefiting from the sort of results of this. If there was one, what you've been through, what you've learned, and someone, say for example, even had an hour on their lunch break, be like, start there. What would be your number one takeaway?
Probably the one about train yourself to notice what's good, right? So, one of the tools I built around positioning, I literally just go, oh man, I have like an hour to prep a little workshopy thing with my creatives at the agency I'm working with. Right, here's the challenge. Do you know what? Just give me 50 positioning options, and then I'm probably going to pick 10 and then kind of work with them. Start there. Like it's so simple to go, give me 10, have a bit of a curated starting point, and all these links are available for free, which I'll share. But like I just go, just give me 10 options for this thing. I don't even care if they're wrong. I just want plenty. I want things to kill, right? And practicing how to kill and why you've killed it is a phenomenal skill. That's how you start understanding, like, why did I not like that? Oh, it's because maybe it's too commodified, it's too expected. Brilliant. You just accelerated the obvious part of the process. So I'd start there.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's everyone's lunchtime sorted next week. Okay, so Rob, thank you so much for your time. As I said, we'll follow up all the attendees with links, slides, et al. And you can catch us up on YouTube, so please like and subscribe there as well. Thank you to Mustafa as well for kicking us off with this presentation today. Incredibly insightful, lots to take into the weekend, lots to think about, and we will see you at this session last Friday of every month next month with lots of other mind-blowing, crossing the Rubicon type content. So thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.